Uh, and so
Vice versa over for Maddie there.
as we begin now on my end, I want to. There's a couple things I usually go over. Sprig, you usually know the routine for anyone who's over on your channel who hasn't been here. Well, hi, it's nice to meet you or meet you again for the first time. I'm Matt from the Hero Zone, and when I open things up, because this channel's an extension of a friendly local game store, and oh shoot, that reminds me, I have to get up and grab the thing. But oh, Solanum Stars, thank you for the follow. Um,
Yeah, thank you for making the jump so long.
there are events and announcements. I like treating this like a get together, not super formal. And I mean, hey, if you want to treat it like a potluck and you bring something fun to eat, we'll just have enough to share with everyone, right? I'm partial to meatballs, so please bring those or some spicy wings. Sprig, are you a spicy wing fan at all?
I am not much of a spicy person,
Okay.
and like wings, I never get wings because they're always really expensive comparative to like what I can get for it. And besides that, is like now most of the way that I get meat is from my butcher. So it's
Yeah.
always scrap cuts. It's always whatever like nobody else wanted and we couldn't sell. So I never get wings.
Well, something that I want to show off to everyone. I have 3 of these alternate art Vecna Eve of Ruin books that are available. I would love to send these out for those of you who want a high level, definitely going into epic territory, a level 10 through 20 adventure. So these are available. Inquire within if you would like to get one, and I will ship it out to you. Also, I did put an art teaser up. I put a little slice of something here that is otherwise quite mysterious, and I'm sure none of you could have a guess as to what
Yep,
this could be.
no ideas whatsoever.
Zero, nada, none, zilch. But
Nothing. Nope.
there
Could
are
not possibly be kobolds.
no. Oh, kobolds. This is goblin territory. But just as
Exactly. That's why it couldn't be kobolds.
yeah. Just as I love providing little peeks, actually, in this case, it is very much a peek here of the art that cometh out of this place. This is your next peek at something that will be finalized here shortly. While we're over on our Discord, and for those of you over in my channel, !Discord will gen up a link for you. Please do join us there. I keep it PG, no worse than PG-13. Just like I ask people to conduct themselves in the shop. There's a mentor network. There's a lot of fun stuff, including events. And those events, the last one we ran, I gave away a $400 pre-painted gargantuan Tiamat, and I actually I have one of the heroes that helped to bring down that menace of our mascots here. For those of you who did participate, you may have noticed a familiar face. At first by silhouette. I'll bring up an example here from that entry channel here. At first by silhouette, appearing as the blue general,
I can too.
though not always depicted as blue, because people could paint these up as they wanted. But bringing down the blue general of Tiamat here, this broke the armies and the cults of Tiamat, sent them scattering, and then wouldn't you know, everyone loves a good redemption arc. And we have a very familiar looking workshop kobold who joins up with the mascots. She has been reformed and promises to help bring down this tyrant who is menacing the lands. And they go on to perhaps do just that, but I'll leave that for you all to watch and discover. There's links to the animatics and all the other stuff, and I hope that you all enjoy it. Though this is not the first rodeo either. As Sprig has been a longtime collaborator, I very much appreciate her coming over here. You can see her over in our, as well in the Liber Colorum She's shown up a few different times as both um, a disguise for the Glublin. The Glublin really, being very adaptive, has taken a keen interest in Sprig here, because not only do we have clearly a witch and no other like sub disguise.
Yeah, nothing else going on there.
But we also do see a Glublin version of Sprig here for this was April Fools of 2022 here. And if for those of you in my channel, if you haven't been over to Sprig's, the inspiration for this came about. Not only have we grown to be very good friends and collaborators here on Twitch, all of her titles for her streams are puns, jokes, and other wordplay, and I'm a fan of that.
3.5 years straight now, it's every single stream, unless it's a special event, has been a pun or bad joke for my title.
And so you all are stuck with her doing this, and I wanted this April Fool's to be representative of that. It won't stop. Just as our Griffin is sitting here, arms crossed, and is listening to yet another another joke. And then you actually were snuck in one last time in a coloring book for Christmas time, actually, as you showed up as a little ornament. That was, right here. And these, of course, are featuring a couple other outfits that Sprig has. So it's not just the workshop attire, but if you ever pop over to her channel, give her a look. Variety streamer. She is very well versed in tabletop role-playing games, minis, and war games too. I don't know. I don't know if I was live when you were talking about or you referenced Blood Bowl, but if you want to talk about that stuff, Sprig's your kobold. Absolutely.
I'm not super versed in Blood Bowl myself. I've played it a few times, but I've never played a lot of it. But my chat did bring it up, and it is a fun game. And vice versa for those of you who are in my chat who have not already heard of Maddie. I'm not sure how you could, because we raid him almost every week. Maddie over the Hero Zone is a wonderful, wonderful spot for a friendly local game store kind of vibe. Always hanging out with some sort of tabletop RPG or traditional gaming stuff going on. Sometimes with video games too. But very often, very consistent vibes, TTRPG, and cozy spot to be. Hello, Lilac, how you doing? I'm doing pretty good, I'm still sick.
And then my last little bit, you made it into this past memorial and the one prior to that as well. You're hanging up here with the rest of the crew here from the wildlands of the north. So, Tio asks, Senpai, any advice for a first-time Honey Heist GM? Have fun. It should be pretty adaptive. Honey Heist is a one-page rule system, so.
So, my one shortest piece of advice to give to almost every GM whenever I can is fail forward. So if someone rolls a check and fails, don't just no, that thing doesn't happen, now we're at a dead end, we kind of sit and twiddle our thumbs and don't know what to do. It's you get the door open, but your lockpicks didn't work, so you jam your shoulder into it and the door crashes open with a bang. You got the door open, but now they know you're here. That kind of vibe.
Yep. If you're there, you're there to tell a story and have fun. That advice will you roll with it. And if you mess up as the GM, that's cool. You can always say, "Oh, I messed that up," and we're gonna we're gonna fix that, because you can always go back and do that. It ain't real life, as fun as it would be at times.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to go over with you all real quick, because we have our guest and I all the previews. There was an ongoing project. We have our BTTV emotes, which Sprig does have two emotes actually here: Beribold and Shard Strong. Those are crossovers here, shared on the BTTV platform. So those will show up in our chat if you type Beribold. Not only will it be up here, but she's hanging out in that arcade up there too. So you're welcome to use these. It's a subscription I pay for, so you all can use these in the channel. And for the art, as many of you know, there was a series of drawings that Dan the Art Man has been making that are featuring the mascots in goth attire. It was an ongoing art project, and it was done for the sake of art, which is the purest form. This doesn't go into an event. This isn't a statement on something. This was me talking to the artist saying, it's been a while since you did something freeform. I want you to spread your literal or metaphorical wings. I want you to challenge yourself. What would be fun for you? And so I unleashed Dan, who is presenting this this goth take on the mascots. The last time this happened was over in the Gallery of Heroes in the seasonal events with when I only had the four, and they were all sea themed. It was a very warm summer. I wanted to cool off. And that was the way chosen forward. So we have our dragon here. I guess business goth. Sprig, did you have a goth phase at all? Is that something? If you did, are you willing to out yourself?
I did not, actually. Okay. I had a very different phase. It wasn't much of a phase as much as a living situation at the time, but there was a meme shared on my Discord server fairly recently about like the types of tomboys in the
yes.
I am what is known as a former Tom creature.
Well, I guess then if you were to...
I think it was about 10 months that I lived in the woods.
A feral creature indeed. But hopefully by doing so, and it sounds like a part of that is stuck with you because you grow food, you said you go to the butcher and that you're fine with the leftovers for making different things. And
in 2020, I started experimenting with making my own cheese. And I discussed it with the local butcher about how I make cheese, and he has like a deli section where he sells sandwiches all the time. So every week, I make a batch of cheese, and then I bring him the most of the batch, and I just keep like a little bit for myself. And then in exchange for the cheese, he gives me like whatever scrap cuts that he can't sell.
Well, and what better climate than a kobold cave or warren to have your cheese do its thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool of you to set up and to do to practice or just to be on one's own like that. And I know that you've also had some experience trying to forge your own items as well out of metal.
Yep, I do have my own forge. I don't get to use it very often because unfortunately I don't own the space that it's in.
Yeah.
But I have it at a friend's house in his garage, so occasionally I manage to get to go there and spend some time blacksmithing. I want to do more, but like life.
Yeah. Well, as I show off leading up to that preview, if there's a type of goth that resonates with you, you're welcome to express that inner goth that coulda, shoulda, woulda been goth as well. But we have our dragon. We have our lovely emo edgy boy Griffin here. It's raining. He's lurking. This is full of energy as well.
No. Shard did have a goth phase, though.
Okay. Then you're welcome to out Shard as well as you see something that resonates here. We come over to Biddy the flying snake here, our messenger. Though I guess on the weekends he dresses a little bit differently here. We have the wonderful spike collar. We have the single fishnet stocking with tears in it, and of course the lovely eyeliner and the big shock of hair. Um, and he doesn't. However functional, well, even the tips of his wings here are pierced. So this is a big energy, very in your face, very energetic here. Continuing that energy, we have the store ghost. Now, Awe and Shard do share several traits as well, very orcish ones. So I don't know if this was Shard's goth phase or goth energy. But you know, this is that just metal rock band kind of goth, maybe more like punk goth. Um, then we come over, and this is our prize goblin Prizzy. This is more that like baby doll goth style, or like goth Lolita fashion, where it's fancy, it's black but also pink, or has like pearls and stuff. It's the cute goth, maybe. You know, you have the pillows and everything is nice. Ah!
Why are you bonking me?
So this is very much a type of goth as well. Our Glublin is more of a raver, maybe a cyber goth. We have the goggles and the spikes, but we also have the glow sticks and everything else. Looks like she might be running from the police, who are just around the corner here after the big party. And then the final one that is in the final stages of rendering anyway. We just had our Drider Caradismeth here. Very classic, you know, that elegant style. The nice big dress, the lace, a little bit of jewelry, but nothing too fancy or spiky. She's hanging out in a dark evergreen graveyard. You know, even brought some flowers, so it's not just like, oh, I'm here to whatever to be in the graveyard. You know, maybe she's wistful, remembering someone. Just has that somber kind of style. Though the last one that is not yet complete is more the Molgoth, which our dear proprietress of the Tumbled Wench will be fully rendered in as the final piece. And when I get that final piece, all will be revealed, and you all can enjoy these outside of just the peaks of them during a broadcast. So, did any of these for you, Sprig, or now that you've seen the full Goth roster? Are any of these your energy or Shard's energy that you saw?
I think Gothic Lolita is probably the closest to my energy. um, and of these, for sure, Business Goth is like the most Shard for sure.
All right, well, there you go. You heard it here first, folks.
She said a few times actually that she would probably still do Gothic style if it wasn't so much work.
To really have that energy, it's more than just having a wallet on a chain.
Basically, Jim or Goth, and she chose Jim.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Sprig and the other kobolds, for letting me get through my my normal introductions and my announcements. And we'll slip right into workshop mode. The first couple things... Oh, hey! There you go. A treat for any of you in my channel.
Daisy Kobold die.
There we go. Dance right. You gotta get that blood moving. So that might be an interesting for any of you in my channel. If you go, oh, whoa, what was that? Sprig has an amazing variety of interactions for her channel, where things can, like bananas can be thrown at her. She can dance or other things. So time and again, you'll see some fun happening here. I'm boring and stodgy. I don't have stuff falling on my head. She is my color commentator here in a very vivid pink. That definitely has that prize goblin energy going here. Skull pillow, but also super bright and shiny, with a sparkle in her eye. So now, what we were talking about for as a catch up for kobolds and as a quick review for the goblins here in the Hero Zone, we have been discussing the fact that you. Oh yeah, another dance. By the way, Hero Zone, they're all different. They're all different dances. And in fact, you're dancing right next to the goblin, so it is that same energy too. So, what we were going over is when there's a lot of us that might default to vanilla Dungeons and Dragons, where okay, well, it's in the book, so we just consider all right, all the 9 races in the player's handbook are there, all the spells are there, everything is by default. Maybe generic Western European fantasy setting. And it's not that it's not fun, that just tends to be what a lot of us play. So why not challenge that concept? Have you ever thought about having a wizard that doesn't have magic missile or fireball? Or even, dare I say, you don't choose, maybe the magic chooses you. What if in your world, and that was the whole series title is In My World, what if all of your magic is just randomly rolled and you get whatever you get? As ways to that could adjust encounters, that could adjust a lot of other things. There are way more other rules, not just which magic you might allow. Like for me, I don't allow come back to life spells or extra dimensional spaces. Because I'm a stick in the mud. No, I just feel like I want higher stakes. If you die, it really sucks. But I also want your life to have meant something and not just be reduced down to a material component cost and an hour ritual that we're probably going to hand wave anyway because I'm not going to sit at the table for an hour and make up a bunch of hand gestures. So
on that note, an alternative and something that I like personally.
Yeah.
Is making death part of the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So like someone dying. For example, I'm just gonna use like a theoretical really quick. I have a tiefling druid in my D&D campaign, and she is sorry, trying to think really quick.
Mm-hmm.
So she is like, the way that tieflings work in the setting is that they're not just the only way to make tieflings is not just being born a tiefling. You can also be born a tiefling to like fully human parents if they make certain deals with devils.
Yeah.
So her story is like, her parents were trying to have a child for ages and they made a deal with the devil that was mutually beneficial. Both of them wanted a child. So she has 2 moms and a dad, technically.
Yeah.
So basically the deal, and like what happens for her as a tiefling, which is a fiend that's outside of the place that they're supposed to be. Because mechanically, tieflings and devils are exactly the same thing in the setting. Devils are just fiends that are already in the Hell's equivalent. And that's where they come from. So when she dies, she's not gonna like get reincarnated the same way as most other people will. She's gonna end up living with her mom in the Hells. So like, part of the adventure for the party then would be they can travel to that plane and they can break the bonds that force her to stay there.
Yeah. It's more than just surface level. It's more than just a skin that you wear while you're rolling some dice, kind of a thing.
It is a whole adventure of its own to interact with the cycle of reincarnation for that setting.
And I hope that you all are inspired by stories like that. Not that I feel, oh, well, vanilla D&D is a curse, or somehow, I'm special because the way that I play, the spells I exclude, somehow make me a more intelligent player, or the one true way to play D&D. But to get you all...
Everybody's table has a different vibe.
Yes. And to be creative and challenge that norm. It's okay to love something that is vanilla, but maybe try vanilla with some sprinkles on it, or a cherry on it, or try a strawberry vanilla mix instead. When was the last time any of you have mixed it up that way? Now, I've been doing this for so long. Oh, go ahead.
I have a silly take, personally anyway. To me, personally, the only wrong way to play D&D is to do everything the books say and nothing else.
You know what? That is a very Sprig, like you, that is a short and sweet way to say something. So I agree. If you're playing just pure vanilla out of the book, you can, but you're leaving so much off the table. If that is your way forward. So think outside the box. If you're playing a wizard, try not casting fireball, or ultra heretical take. If you're playing a warlock, don't take Eldritch Blast. Ooh, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that. But
I actually really like taking Magic Stone on my warlocks as the alternative.
The things you can do, if that's a personal challenge, that have you adapt, or you are more immersed in the story or the world than simply what is statistically the best spell, which is why many of us take Eldritch Blast or Fireball or Magic Missile. Oh, Dragon, thank you for the follow.
Oh, thanks for making the jump, Draco.
Which by the way, when I hit 5,000. There's going to be another big storyline event happening. If you all like that Tiamat one, with your all's help, at 5K, there's something bigger that I'm going to be presenting. So thank you all for coming along on that journey. But yeah, so step up and challenge yourself. That's been the whole In My World conversation so far as we've explored rules. Now, for extra context, we also... we review different fantasy subgenres because ultimately that's what led chat over here on my end to say, well, of these 18, let's go for sci-fi. And by that, the impetus is not going to be on the person having the power necessarily. It's the items, it's the technology that empower people or allow people to break the normal rules, rather than something like a superhero fantasy where the person is the one who breaks the rules and it's more intrinsic on them. So that's where that came from. We also reviewed concepts around systems of magic tech, and different things. A lot of this is going to be redundant for most of us in Sprig's channel and the Hero Zone, so I don't need to I don't need to review that. Now, the concept of hard and soft magic is something I wanted to go over for consideration. Are those terms that you're familiar with, Sprig?
I am at least relatively familiar with the terms of soft and hard magic, yeah.
In the workshop, chat voted to have a hard magic system and a low magic system. So the rules of magic are fairly well known. We know that there are costs to things, and what can be paid to achieve the effect. It's just either a lot of people are unwilling or unable to pay that effect. So that's the setup for us. Dragon said I had to tell my old group that because they were full of rules lawyers. Oh, is this to step away from just running things by the book, to actually have a little bit of fun at the table, Dragon, for 111, they yelled at you for saying your tabaxi was somehow, or that my tabaxi was a Snow Lynx tabaxi. They kicked you out because you wanted tabaxi that was just cosmetically reflavored as a Snow Lynx? Oh. Well, I guess if that's... you know what, Dragon? They probably did you a favor then, because if they can only ever play what is presented to them by other people in a book, that really limits imagination and it really limits fun. And that frees you up to find a group with whom you will resonate better and who actually will let you, changing no mechanics to a Tabaxi, at least, you know, you have the DLC skin of a Snow Lynx, you know, or there are some things, whether a rules lawyer knows it or not. Here's a dirty secret in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Damage typing doesn't matter. Now, there are statistically things like force damage tends to damage way more things than fire. Fire is the most resisted and immunized against damage type. But when it comes to calculating CR and a lot of other things, force damage is fire damage. And if a dwarf having poison resistance, now that's a broad one. That's not necessarily a bad one to have because of how broad poison can be. But there's really no mechanical detriment if you say, well, I want an Arctic dwarf, and so I'm going to give myself cold resistance. I'm just swapping out poison for cold. You know, or a tiefling can do something similar. James says if you really want to blow their mind, play a feline tiefling. Yeah.
Brufros is right though. I believe it was fire is the most vulnerable damage type. Poison is the most immune, and fire is the most resisted.
That might be the points across though. Now I will say, Dragon,
but that's among creatures that are in the books, and like to use my own game as an example, at least I've used 3 creatures from any of the books in my 5-year-long campaign.
I will say, Dragon, because you say, well, they've banned races because it wasn't in the setting, which, if it does come to that, just because something is in a book doesn't mean that it should exist in a setting or in a personal campaign. However, the caveat to that ultimate freedom is communication. And so if they tell you up front and say, that we are sticking to only the 4 core fantasy races in the player's handbook. You might go, wait, there's 9. Those other 5 they're there, but even the player's handbook says these are kind of bonus extra ones that might not exist in worlds. But for sure you have humans, dwarves, halflings, and elves. And, I mean, who knows about the drow even, too. But if they communicate that up front, and say, look, if you love tieflings or something, I will let you cosmetically reskin an elf. But this world only really revolves around the concepts or the histories around these people. And yes, I understand tieflings in the player's handbook. There are no tieflings in this world. I will either work with you to find a different way to get a similar vibe that still makes sense, or I'm just telling you up front, then this game isn't for you. If you must play a tiefling mechanically and cosmetically, my game isn't for you. And that's fine. Not every game is for everyone. And it's fine to have that kind of hopefully a polite rejection. Now, of course, people can be butts about a lot of different things. And shame on them if they are. It's good to just be upfront about that stuff. And Brufros, yes, hello. But
tieflings are just an example in this conversation, though, Triple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some games just don't have certain things in it. So, like, my campaign, for example, I have a my own setting handbook that has alternate versions of all of the races. And I told my players, like, if you're going to play as the races that are in the setting, I'm totally okay with you using either the stat block from my book or from the official one. But, like, culturally, these are, like, there's important stuff to know that's
Yeah.
not the standard Faerun setting stuff.
And if we all agree that, hey, by these arbitrary sets of rules, because even what's printed in the player's handbook, in the grand scheme of things, are arbitrary rules. They just happen to
Yep.
mostly work together. It's
Mhm.
fine. But we talked about this. There's a lot of forums you can talk to about. Well, if you're building an in my world, if you're talking about it, is everyone a human? And you just say, well, I don't care if someone wants to play a half orc. There are no half orcs. It's just you're a human that is more physically present in some way, perhaps, or whatever.
A good example might be, like, the setting of Diablo. The barbarian tribes of the north, as they call them, are, like, just as a people, they're a culture of people that natively, or native people of that culture are born larger and
Yeah.
stronger than most other people.
Yep.
And that's basically the whole gimmick of all of their features as the mechanics. So, like, you're still human, you're just a bigger one.
Yeah. And you are allowed to do that, everyone. I and maybe even Sprig are giving you explicit permission to do that, and you don't have to worry
Mhm.
about what internet randos on Twitter think
Yes.
about, well, that's by not having it out of the book or not meeting a certain expectation.
Hi, Hero Dragon.
Then hi, hero. um I'm setting
Yeah,
up for our
it's.
conversation, Hero Dragon. I was doing a review because we have Kobold Sprig's community who are joining us,
Hmm.
and with Sprig's help, we're going to create this sci-fi, hard magic, low magic setting that we began on Wednesday. And then unfortunately Thursday, I was blown out. There's no way I could have done it. So I'm
Hmm.
giving the rundown here. And for you all in my chat, I'm sharing links to the resources that we had gone over about stats and players. There's meta things to consider. Do you want your campaign world broadly to be everyone's low level? Like Eberron is very low level.
Uh-huh.
It is rare to have someone above 5th level in Eberron. Now, could you go to 20?
Yeah,
Of
it's like
course.
an Epic 6 world.
Yeah, exactly. And even beyond a world that could accommodate someone up to 6th level or up to 20th level, do you want to run a story that goes that far? You might say, no, 1 to 10 is the sweet spot in D&D 5e. I'm happy 1 to 10, and you will retire the big damn hero of the land at level 10. You will live happily ever after.
Mm.
You will have riches unknown to 99.999% of everyone else in this world at level 10. You don't need to get to level 20 to be an
Mm.
accomplished master of your craft. Or maybe you want to take it that far. That's really up to you. We have a lot of because so much content. I mean, actually, this recent Vecna book is an exception. It goes 10 to 20, or that
Mhm.
Undermountain, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, is a 6 through 20 that takes you into the very high up there
Mm.
things. Most of the pre-written modules are a 1 to 10 or are somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I think Tyranny of Dragons is a fairly good example of that. While the modules themselves are not great, or at least the first one's not great, the first one is 1 to 8, and then there's the second one that's 8 to 16, I believe.
Yes, because at 17th level, you are epic level in D&D 5e. It used to be 20 and
Hmm.
above in older editions. In 5e, as soon
Yep.
as you hit 17th level, even by vanilla player's handbook and dungeon master's guide standards, you are an exceptional near demigod if you are
Yep.
level 17. So remember that for perspective on anything you do in this particular system. Now, 4th edition, did you play any 4th edition, Sprig?
I played like a little bit of it. I didn't play very much though.
Okay. For those of you, if you're not familiar, 4th edition had 3 tiers, and each tier was 10 levels. You had Heroic tier, which was 1 to 10. You had Paragon tier, which is 11 to 20. And then you had an explicitly labeled Epic tier, which was 21 to 30. Now, there you could say that there was an expectation that you would go all the way up to 30 then, because everything was... it's a weird word to say. It's like running a realistic fantasy campaign. Balanced.
Yeah.
Now, 4th edition was balanced in very mechanical ways, but it was balanced to go up to 30 because you would do a lot of ass kicking, and you'd also have your ass kicked at those levels as you should. But a lot of people are like, well, it does feel mechanical. I'm not disagreeing, but there was almost an expectation that you go above 20, and there's that. I'm sorry. Go ahead with what you're saying. Oh, if I interrupted you, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was sharing a couple other
Oh
sites.
no, I was just like mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I was guessing and nodding a lot.
Okay, all right. So sharing things, of course. Look, if you're sitting down with friends, online or off, friends or family members, a lot of out of character stuff. Well, hey, we're all a bunch of horror movie nerds, and so there's some context for comfort levels or content, whatever. Those are conversations you have with them. I'm not worried about that. That is a table by table basis. It's out there. Talk about it, or just realize that you're playing with friends and you figure it out from there. But there are some interesting other things to look at in broader player bases. Or here's a trend. Now this was only from D&D Beyond. The average age of characters created last year was 28. And now this is going by D&D standards, like, oh, but elves can live to be 700 in D&D terms, or dwarves can be, I think, 300 or something like that. But this is an interesting bridge between IRL and in character, as there might be younger people playing who say, well, I want to be old and wise at 28. And then there's older people who go, my back hurts. I don't want to play an elf who oofs and has popping knees like I do. So I'm also going to play a 28-year-old. So it's an interesting sweet spot. But this is a sort of a thing that can go into the cultures in game that you build. Like you were talking about having custom takes on the vanilla races in the player's handbook. However, you made the distinction, Sprig, that there is a culture, and you might even change some things where elves in your world might not live to 700. Maybe they live to 7,000, or they only live to 70 if they're super lucky.
Yeah, the elves in my setting, just to use that example, only start to show the signs of aging at 1,000.
Okay, yeah.
They're not considered an adult until they're 200. They only reach physical maturity at about 100. One of the players in my campaign is an elf that's 35.
Oh, so this is baby's first adventure.
He's still only a child.
Yeah. A kid adventure.
He is the wizard, so he's like a mega genius.
Yep.
But it's really funny because like the campaign for so long, for like 3.5 years, I think, he was the semi-leader of the group, and they were like very chaotic and often did a lot of bad and dangerous things. Because he's a child, and the player did a great job of it. But it was at that point, like 3.5-ish years in, one of our players had backed out of the game, and we added a new player in who also made an elf and realized that this is a child. He's magically aged to adulthood, but he's still a child. He wears a hood and a mask and stuff to hide the fact that he's a little kid.
There's a lot of interesting role play and other, even just in-world society building when you're faced with a shorter-lived people, like a human to an elf, where you go, wait, your people consider you to be, however we consider kids in our real world, whatever, dumb or full of energy, or they don't know what they're talking about, or whatever. And yet, in this case, I don't know if that's exactly translated, but to your game, but uh, we were being led by someone we thought was wise beyond years or something. Is our party wizard, and to his own people is actually like we should actually be the ones in charge because we're the babysitters.
Yep. Yeah, because they are a human and a tiefling that are both younger than 20. And they had a half-elf who was like 24. And then they got another human into the party who was like 19. So, like, every one of them is like young adults. And then they have this elf wizard who's 35, and they're like, well, he's like twice our age. He's gotta know something.
Those are the fun quirks of life that are exacerbated by fantasy, but those are fun little discoveries and things I like thinking about just as a person too, to be reflective. And so something else we brought up in your world, what percentage of people are adventurers, or in particular, not just a broad adventurer, a wizard, a sorcerer? Do sorcerers even exist, let alone tieflings?
So,
Go ahead.
assuming this was not a hypothetical, like, I'm forgetting the word. Um, rhetorical. Assuming this isn't rhetorical, please. Adventurers are like sub 1%.
Yeah.
People with magic, it depends where you are in the world. Different parts of the world have different concentrations of it. But like the bulk of my campaign takes place in one country. It's one whole continent is where the campaign takes place overall, but the bulk of it has happened in one continent or one country because most of the players are all from that country. In that country, magic is about 1 in 4 million people have magic at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then among that 4 million, like 1 in 4 million, it's only 1 in like 50 of those who has magic that's anything greater than ever learning one cantrip.
Now, what Sprig is talking about for you all is also a good way. If you say, I don't know, even vanilla out of the player's handbook magic is so powerful. That's a way that in your world you can also control that, because your world might have magic be such an excruciatingly rare thing to happen that you don't often see much of it at all. Or the fact that there's a party that has 2 people who can cast spells would be a statistical improbability. And as a DM, if you're going, I don't know, like nothing can challenge because magic can do all this other stuff. You also say in this same world, if there is 1 magic user, let alone 2, that's going to get a lot of attention. A lot of people who know how to counter magic or avoid magic, or just that level of attention and scrutiny is going to make things more difficult for people practicing it, or a natural level of trust. Oh, you cast magic? I've heard what magic can do to people. I don't, I don't trust you, or I'm not going to make resources easily available to you, or something along those lines.
So I actually have a couple of things where that becomes relevant again. I have 2 different campaigns in my world. One of them is like set on the Western continent, which is like your traditional Western European style fantasy setting. And then the other one is on the Eastern continent, which is a lot more African and Asian inspired.
Okay.
So, in that campaign, they're in this big city. There's a country that was terrorized by this giant sandworm for like centuries. It did massive, untold devastation across the continent. And the city, like the country is starting to rebuild, and one of the biggest centers of reconstruction is what used to be a really big city that was devastated and is now rebuilding in kind of like I don't know what the terms for it would be. It's very ramshackle. There's a lot of buildings that like lean up against older buildings. It's a mega dungeon campaign. There's a hyper dense and very badly planned city, basically, that's been rapidly expanding. And in that city, there's people that have been there for generations and generations. And now that this dungeon appeared and all these adventurers are moving in and new people are coming from all over the world, the average population that can use magic is going up. Because the people that can use magic typically are more likely to become adventurers of some
Yeah.
description. So, as more and more magic people move in, then they realize, oh, I can take this job to clean, like, because cleaning the street gutters takes, like, hours and hours of hard labor, and they only earn a tiny amount of money. You earn, like, a few silver per street. But I have prestidigitation. I can finish a street in a half hour.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go and work in the dungeon. I can just use my magic and clean streets for an afternoon and make 5 gold.
Yeah.
So there's a group of people that still live in the city who are from that, like, group of older populace who feel embittered to the people moving in with magic and have gone out of their way to form a sort of almost mob.
What Sprig has what Sprig just brought up as well. It's a very good lesson in. You don't need a degree in any kind of socioeconomics to see how a society can work like that. And in fact, we had this is a bit of an example. I might be extrapolating more from what you presented. So I'm not claiming knowledge of your campaign, but
I'll preface a little bit. Everything in my setting, I realized the parallel in this setting and like what I just described. I deliberately built every major culture in my world to be like an exaggerated satirization of real-world phenomena in cultures and governments.
and it's for those of you out there. It's if you like studying that, do exactly that. You can learn some good lessons just about our real world and how to function in it. But also, the point of fantasy is to sometimes act as a mirror, but also to allow you to exacerbate an idea to fantastic levels. And what we saw here, we have a magic user going and doing the menial tasks. We have this idea that in this society, we have people who are performing these different levels of the hierarchy of needs. Uh, can you imagine being a wizard where you don't have to, you're not expected to farm or repair things or scrape by. You're allowed to just read at all, let alone read books or whatever else. But at this point, we had someone who reached this level of self-actualization built on everyone else who has cut down a tree, who has sawed it, who has shaped it, who has, mined up metal, blah, blah, blah. And so we get the very basic physiological things because you need food, you need water, you need to not live in what happens to food and water after you're done with it. Safety by building things and learning from that, it all builds up. But we have someone who came back around in that example is cleaning the gutters. That's sanitation. That's healthy. That's working with the common person, and then that, in a sense, can uplift everyone else as the cycle continues and more people are pushed up. And that could even be, I don't know if you're going for it, that's often what technology does in our real world. And it's a fear that people have. I'm going to get replaced by a robot. And I mean, the topic du jour right now is AI. There are robots who are replacing a lot of basic tasks at fast food places, or just, I mean, there's a point where people aren't going to be hired to be miners anymore because you could just send a machine in that doesn't need all the safety stuff, doesn't need oxygen equipment, doesn't need if there's a cave-in, oh, all right, well, there's an insurance write-off for a new machine, but we don't need to endanger human lives. At the same time, everyone who's a miner is kicked out of being a miner, and so where do they go from there? It's a very good way, I think, that you presented to show the same but different take on a phenomena that any of us from any social strata, background, education level, we see happening around us and can think about in ways that make our interactions in fantasy easier without needing to live in that fantasy world.
it also, like, I also have brought a lot of bad things into this world, like prejudices over
Yeah.
race and such in the setting exists. It's a problem. And I frame it as a problem because it gives me something that I can use for the players to latch onto
Yeah.
as an adventure of its own, where they can choose to take
Yeah.
the moral position, or they can choose to sacrifice their morals in favor of what they need at that moment. And it's important in a story that there is conflict, and that's
Yes.
why, to me, it was important to include these elements in my story, to introduce conflict in various subjects. In, like, I have a group that I trust, and my group trusts me, and I get to run a lot of really
Yep.
cool adventures because of that.
People hated Sprig because she told the truth. It's true. As much as in our real world, we absolutely want more people to find peace and togetherness. Those are very good ideals. There's, for many and myriad reasons, it doesn't exist, and we can explore those, confront them in fantasy as even a way to, I don't know, try and problem solve a way for the real world through a different approach. But ultimately, what Sprig touched upon is my favorite actual big bad evil guy of the campaign is a moral decision. It's easy to put a monster in front of someone with a pool of hit points, and as soon as the hit points go to zero, the problem is solved, and yay, we won. It's a lot more difficult if the final boss, quote unquote, of your game, of your story, or whatever, is a moral conundrum, and it carries the weight of what you do in this story is going to affect a lot of people, and you're going to have to, if you come back and play at my table, you are living in a world you have left for yourself in the future. And what do you want that to be?
On that same token, I have a similar thing that I'm doing with my campaign right now, but not quite the same.
Okay.
Um, so what I've got for my campaign, at least, and this is equally valid, I think, anyway, is that the big bad of the setting is the big bad. They are evil. There is no, like, it is an evil force more so than a character. Um, it basically along the idea of an elder god, like Cthulhu-esque. It's a monster from beyond the stars that's going to eat your world. It's the bad guy. But the way that it's doing that is it can't eat the world until a certain, like, a barrier around the world makes it possible. There is a barrier, kind of like a magical ozone, basically,
Okay.
that is keeping it from being able to devour the world. So it has to send smaller, weaker constructs into the world to weaken that barrier from the other side. So what they have is the big bad evil guy that they're actually facing is an agent of that elder god that is infiltrating people's dreams and incepting things to push
Mm.
events to happen in the world and to drive a chaotic agenda, basically. So, like, it's influencing events, so there's moral people who think they're doing the right thing who aren't necessarily doing the right thing. So the players have to make decisions with who they're going to side with on these problems and what they're going to do about the problems themselves that are presented. So, like, one of the big conflicts of the Tuesday campaign is there's two countries that are at war over who will control the protectorate nation that's between the two of them. So, like, it was formerly an empire that was fractured after this big war a couple hundred years ago. Now they're both actively at war, and there is a third nation that has split from the empire as well and said, we don't want to be part of this fighting, we'll just be part of whichever country wins.
Okay.
And the players had to choose which side of the two that they were going to join. They ended up choosing the one that's the country that they come from, kind of predictably, but
Yeah.
it was like a backdrop of the setting that's been built on for so long, and this war is in large part was started by that agent of the big bad in the campaign.
The a good point you touched on in that as well,
Paper,
with
scissors?
your example, is it's very rare to have someone who wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm a bad guy and I'm going to do bad guy stuff. I'm going to be
Hmm?
and do." Now, people like that exist. There are monsters among us,
Yes.
unfortunately. Though it is much more rare to have someone who just absolutely recognizes it and embraces that than someone who does things for compelling or even thoughtful. Not that we have to agree with the thought
Hmm.
process, or especially the results of it, but people who do honestly think I'm getting up in the morning, I'm doing the right thing for good reasons, and I'm filled with happy feelings doing it. Not even I'm
Hmm.
tricking everyone into evil by doing or saying this thing. Um, and each has a place. It's actually very it's masterfully done. If there's this overt, this elemental evil that people understand or is there, it is evil and it is a force to be reckoned with. Because if you don't, there it
Hmm.
is. There is no arguing against it. It's like being upset in the Warhammer in Warhammer 40,000. It's like being upset at the Tyranids of eating your world. That's what they do.
Hmm.
There is no evil to the Tyranids. They're hungry. That is why they're
Yep.
made, and that's what they do. Now, it sucks to be eaten and converted into biomass and to lose your entire world, but they didn't do it because they hate you. They did it because they're an elemental force of hunger
Yes.
and all of this. However,
Your big
that's the
bad does
fun.
not
Yep.
necessarily need to be a character. It can be a force too.
Yep.
I think is where we're going with this.
Dingo and Versilis, howdy. Um, so so these are this is the review. These are some seeded ideas for you all, things that we have talked about, and now we're getting this extra perspective from Sprig here. What we had determined on Wednesday, and I'll bring it up here on I'll bring it up on the screen. Is this the there we go. And then what I'm gonna do, I have to get up and take a quick break. I mean, you might do your thing, and I can put you over on our break screen just like you were in our lobby too. But with chat's help,
Okay.
after reviewing all of this and that we had talked about, chat wanted a sci-fi fantasy campaign world or setting. So the focus is on what things are and do. People use the things to be exceptions to the rules. They can we understand what gravity is. If you want to defy gravity, it's not who you are, it's what you're using to defy gravity.
Hmm.
Um, that kind of a thing. This is also between high magic, no magic, low magic. They wanted low magic, so there is some, but it's fewer and further between. I don't have a hard number. We're not going to go contrived like, well, we have to balance this so that 13.4% of the population has a blah blah. I'm not worried about that, but the concept, it's in the hands of some, but not known, but not everyone has it or can use it or fully understands it. But someone on the street, you don't have to own a mobile phone to understand what this does or generally how it works.
Yeah.
That it sends a signal to a tower and it bounces that to another phone or something. So that's the approach.
Um,
We have a hard
so
magic. Oh, go ahead.
functionally reading through this really quick though, I
Yeah.
just want to bring up functionally what this reads out as is basically Mass Effect is like an almost perfect fit of all of these ideas. For a source example, I just wanted to bring that up. Sorry.
No, no. If you can repeat that, I had someone in chat address me, and I'm giving an answer real quick. Can you say
Oh,
it one more time, please?
yeah, so all of these points describe more or less a Mass Effect as a source
Oh,
example.
okay.
Where it's a sci-fi fantasy, so we have like multiple different peoples from different worlds that have different technologies. There is this magic of sorts that everyone can kind of use it, but not really necessarily know everything about it. The magic is pretty hard system, pretty defined and quantifiable. Um, the source is the only thing that's different, really, in this case. So, in Mass Effect, at least, they discovered something they refer to as EZO,
Okay.
which is element zero, which is a periodic element that that through certain electrical impulses can manipulate mass.
Okay.
So there's like people that are called biotics are able to use EZO using an implant in their brain, lets them manipulate it to change the mass of objects.
That would be the
Functionally
magic.
giving them telekinesis and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, that's your functional magic. And it's how like most of the weapons work. It's how the like faster than light travel works. It's a lot of the technology in the setting uses the same principle.
Well, springboarding from that, because we might be able to use that as a starting point or at least a touchstone. The last quality is well, if we have a magical setting, and of course, fantasy magic is usually more what is the definition of a fantasy setting. How is the magic performed? Is it truly something for nothing? We went through a variety of costs, but ultimately, chat wanted the source of magic. It needs to be personal in some way. It must cost blood, life energy, sanity, hunger, memories. It has to be intrinsic. It has to be a cost incurred by someone. Um, so that is the caveat in something around which then are other societies. In this setting, it doesn't matter if it's a European inspired, Asian inspired, Mesoamerican inspired. Those are localities that can flavor it, but functionally, any of these civilizations in this campaign world are going to face these aspects to in our world. And I spitballed some ideas. I threw some initial things out with chat. Not that what we come up with has to abide by this, but what I'll do, because I got to get up and take a quick break. I'm going to leave you all in the entertainment or administrations of Sprig. I'm going to take a 5-ish or so minute break, and I will come back and we'll pick up where we left off. Although Sprig, if you got to take a break too, I understand. But
Oh no, I'm good.
good to go. Okay, then let's take a quick break, everyone. I'm gonna go take care of what I got to take care of, and when we come back, we're gonna pick up here. And with Sprig's help, let's talk about a world like this that will challenge the norm of vanilla D&D, not overcomplicate it. I still want to keep it easy to access, easy to understand. If you've played D&D 5e before, you're going to get 96% of everything we're talking about, though by changing a couple little things, that can have a significant ripple.
I already have an idea too for the source of magic inspired from Outward, a video game that I've played. And the optional rule from, I believe it's an optional rule from the DMG, is the honor ability score.
Ah, yeah.
I'll talk about it more when you get back, though.
Yep, and I do have your I do have your document here, the Desolate Darkness setting, which
Yes,
does have some other rules, and we can use that.
Page 19 is where the optional rules are.
And we can even review these and adopt some or whatever, adapt, and we'll go forward from there. All right, everyone, break time, and I'll be back as soon as I can.
Yeah, and I will like field questions or chatting stuff too. Oh goodness, burn recluse. I'm a gravity isn't a thing person as your rookie at work. Nearly died from it. I'm not a science person, but please. Oh, I'm dancing around the field. Let's go.